No major news today, so let's get straight into the data. Do me a quick favor and like and subscribe and watch the video till the end to help out the channel, and let's get started. So looking at fear and greed, we saw this dip down to 68. Again, we've been chopping in the same region for a while, nothing really changing here. Breadth still hovering, still extreme greed across the major indicators, and then put call ratio, no change. Market volatility, we saw it step up a little bit. Safe haven demand did drop into fear, which is interesting. We'll take a look at yields on the charts later, and then junk bond demand still has not moved. Moving over to seasonality here on the 25th, we were expecting a little bit of sideways to slightly up price action. Didn't work out that way. We ended up getting a slight down, so more like you would have expected from the 20th into the 21st. We'll see how that carries out into the start of April. April is a typically bullish period. Maybe we're seeing a little bit of these dips here related to this election year prediction, but we'll see how it plays out over the next few days. And then looking at April, just to give you that perspective, you can see regular years super bullish. Election years, you do see some dips here with the NASDAQ and the Russell around the 12th, 11th into the 12th potentially. And those are fairly substantial, down at the 1.5% to 2% range. So do keep that in mind. Still could be sideways choppy up until about the 19th or 20th, and then just about everything is bullish. Moving over to the economic calendar, you can see new home sales did come in a little bit under expectations. Two-year note auction also below expectations. Previous read here was revised up slightly, but not a lot. And then looking at tomorrow, we do have core durable goods, as well as consumer confidence could absolutely push markets around. We'll see how that plays out. Previous read was minus 0.3. Current is expected to be 0.4, so that would be a nice switch. And then you can see month over month, also a very substantial difference there. And then consumer confidence expected to step up just slightly. And then looking at Wednesday, nothing really here to affect you going into tomorrow's close. Then moving over to Max Pain, again, you can see there are still a lot of options, but it seems like it went down quite a bit. 1.6 million, 4.3 on the ratio, so the ratio went down a little bit also. But just look how many options there are on the put side. 510, 515, all have tons of puts. And you can see the call walls are very, very small. So just seems like upside is what we're going to see before the end of the week is over. Current price 520, max pain 515, but again, this still looks very bullish to me. Moving over to the charts, starting off with the S&Ps here, you can see it looks like we might be establishing a bit of a bull flag. We did hold a slightly higher low versus the pre-market low. You can see that here on the hourly chart. We're pushing towards that upper trend. It has not broken yet, but if this does break here tomorrow, that could give you some pretty decent opportunity. And then you have the next resistance here at 524.23, and then trend resistance way higher, 534 or so. Momentum did step down fairly substantially. RSI breaking down as well below the SMA on the daily chart. And then looking at the hourly RSI, you can see we did hold a higher RSI read on that dip low, and we're back above the SMA here. It looks like we're seeing slightly bullish momentum, so we'll see how this opens up, but it does look decent after hours, potentially holding that higher low, looking for some higher levels up to that resistance. Moving over to the Tasty charts, you can see that same hourly setup. We are still holding that 89 EMA here on the hourly chart. That is at 119.54. We'll see if that holds. We did initially dip into that almost third ATR band. That was at 519.25, and now you can see that's drifted down to 518.74. If that 89 EMA breaks, then you have the 144 EMA 518.14. No major volume. The biggest volume of the day was on that down candle, which is a little bit concerning. That was coming off of the 34 EMA. You can see the ATR stops sitting up there at 520, 521.80, and they are on the bearish side, so technically, based on this, you should be in a bearish setup, but it does seem to be holding a little bit of support just like we saw on that flag setup. And then looking at the 4-hour chart, you can see still a bullish setup. ATR stops here 517.60. You can see that momentum though on the volume weighted MACD quite bearish. Pretty interesting to see that even on the bullish candles, still seeing selling. And we were holding that 8 EMA to the downside throughout the session. That is currently trading at 520.53. We'll see if that level holds as resistance. That is a little bit concerning that was continuing to hold as some selling pressure. And then you have that bottom ATR band around 515.93, which does make sense with the max pain that we saw. And then looking at the daily chart just for a moment, nothing really has changed here. Still holding well above the 8 EMA. Still bearish momentum on the volume weighted MACD, but it looks like it melt up. Moving over to the NASDAQ, very similar thesis. In fact, the flag setup actually looks a little bit cleaner here. Big rally in, dip, tested that same trend early in the pre-market, hit the upper trend, pulled back. We'll see if it dips again in the pre-market tomorrow, but right now it is rallying a little bit after hours. Nothing crazy, very much within this short-term structure. But if this breaks here, you do have some trend resistance up around 449.50, and then if that breaks, you can see we'd be back into this lower part of the trend here, which would be a much bigger move. Then you'd have trend resistance up around the 460 area. I don't think we're going to go there right away, but just keep in mind that is the potential opportunity if this structure breaks like a bull flag. Moving over to the Tasty charts, you can see that selling pressure coming through on that one bearish candle that we had throughout the session. Big volume on that as well. Definitely not what you would want to see. Volume weighted MACD showing a little bit of bullishness. You can see the ATR stops did get broken just barely here on that 1 o'clock candle. We sold off from that level, but your ATR stops are now to the downside. And you can see that last candle of the day right around 443.20. We're holding right in the middle of that range, almost exactly to the penny on the middle of the range. So sideways chop, slightly bullish ATRs, and then you can see 4 hour, basically the same as the SPY. Bearish MACD, still bullish ATR, still holding right at that 8 EMA and at the mid range. If we do get an upswing to that upper ATR, that would be around 451.30, and I do think that that is a possibility if this bull flag breaks out. That would be my price target, 451.30 or so, which would give you about 1.5% upside potential. And then looking at the daily chart, still seeing that very slight fade. You can see this topping formation right in that zone. 8 EMA, 442.20 as support, but still bearish MACD here on the daily chart. Moving over to the Russell, we did get a slight update there, 0.23 to the upside. Inside candle, so nothing convincing. Did test 206.50, couldn't hold above it. So really nothing has changed from the Friday close except for the MACD did step up to bullish a little bit. RSI just slightly below the SMA. So it looks like consolidation, still watching this as a lower high setup, potentially looking for that 204.62 level to break. And if it does, I'm looking for quite a bit of downside to 198.75. And if it holds, you could look for a push to 212, but we haven't really seen a move like that yet. And then moving over to the Dow, you can see we did get a continuation lower, 0.4 to the downside, momentum rolling down. RSI slightly below the SMA. Got the 9 EMA there at 391.90. It's still within the structure, so it could absolutely bounce from here, but this is pretty weak. Very big down day on the Friday session. Pretty solid continuation here on the Monday session. And if that 9 EMA breaks, then you're looking at the 21 down at 390.36. And that would mean that we've broken all of these trend lines. We've done that before. You can see it here going back to the 15th, 18th, and 19th. But that was right at the support level, 387.77. Held that level and then bounced. If it breaks below there again, I would be concerned. Moving over to Apple and Tesla, you can see Apple did sell off again here today. I put out a video this morning about how Apple's being targeted by the EU, and they did sell off 0.83 on the day. It is below the level, 170.90. Did bounce above it here after hours, but momentum bearish, RSI selling off. It is still above the SMA, so it could hold here. We're still holding a higher low. Added a trend line here. We'll see if that breaks. Still have 2 trend lines to the upside, as well as that 21 and 9 EMA. It's still below all the EMAs and SMAs. So right now, 170.90, super important. Got the 9 and 21 EMA at 173.30 and 174.54 respectively. And then just above that, you have a trend resistance zone, really close to this zone here at 176.15. So important zone right there. We'll see if it breaks to the upside. Right now, it doesn't look like it. And then Tesla, you can see that setup. Big move down, bear flag, breakdown. So far, this has hung in there fairly well. Let's go ahead and add another trend line. We'll see if that breaks. Seems to be holding some slightly higher lows, 167.34 critical zone. It's back above the 9 EMA, showing some bullish momentum, bullish RSI. Next level, 177.70, 21 EMA at 180.62. Still very much a downtrend, but showing some signs of life, very similar to Apple. Moving over to Broadcom and NVIDIA, you can see Broadcom was down slightly. It seems to be throwing some wicks, potentially setting up a lower high. Momentum bullish, RSI still bullish, so it could absolutely swing from this trend line around 1331, 1332, right in that zone. We'll see if it bounces from there, but right now it's showing a little bit of weakness. And then NVIDIA up again here today, 0.76, momentum rolling to bullish, RSI looks bullish, still finding resistance at that trend line, and we did close below it. It is up a little bit after hours, and again, if that breaks, your next trend is up around 1034. Then moving over here to Meta and Google, again, following up on the video from this morning, you can see both of them were down 1.29% and 0.41%. Momentum rolling over here on Google. It's had a powerful run here from mid-March up until current levels. It is still above support at 150.26. It did test it pretty substantially all the way down to 149 or so. Didn't quite get to the 9 EMA, but it seems to be finding some resistance. Again, momentum stepping down. You can see a bit of an oscillation there. RSI stepping down. And then here on Meta, this looks significantly weaker based on the RSI as well as a lower high. See, we hit that 520.31 level. Lower high here on the setup. Momentum bearish. And then look at this RSI. This is everything you would not want to see. Continuously lower highs on strength. Tried to bounce. We had divergence. Got up to the SMA. Got above it briefly and then broke back below it. That is a bearish setup there on RSI. Understand that the trend is still bullish, but that is a pretty bearish setup, and these indicators are pretty concerning. So we'll see how that plays out, especially with the catalyst of the lawsuit. Moving over to staples and discretionaries, this continues to sell off on both of them. Staples down 0.28, right to the level, 75.40. Tested the 21 EMA, bounced a little bit, holding the level, momentum bearish, RSI bearish. And this looks like a double top now, and we are setting up for that initial breakdown. Potentially doesn't look great. You can see on the volume profile right here, big gap all the way down to 74.45. That'd be about $1 lower from current levels. Doesn't look super good. And then looking at discretionaries, down 0.33. Momentum rolling down, RSI still above the SMA, but breaking down. Got the 21 sitting at 181.56, and then some support at 180.10. A highly traded zone right there as well, around 179.85. See if this zone holds. Need that trend to hold if it's going to do it. You can see that longer term trend critical in this zone. It's been holding it for a while. If you really zoom out here, however, it does look like a rising wedge, which eventually does look bearish. You can see we didn't even get up to that upper trend line here on this most recent push before we broke down. Clear island reversal, and that does look quite bearish in my opinion. Moving over to industrials and transports, we talked about these in the Sunday video. They have been driving growth here recently. Now we got two bearish days in a row, which is interesting, 0.65 and 0.74 respectively. And look at that volume coming through here on transports. Big volume day, big selling. It is at the 21 EMA. So we're in a zone of support. Again, look at this volume profile. We are right at the bottom of it. If this breaks, your next area of support would be these next lows around 68.23. I have a level here at 67.85. So very important level. It's right at the SMA. Technically, it is below it, 55.27 versus 55.41. So that doesn't look great either. And then similarly here on industrials, broke back below the trend. 9 EMA 123.45 and then 21 down at 122.27. Momentum rolling down, RSI breaking down from overbought conditions. All of those indicators show that we are a little bit extended and probably looking for some downside. Moving over to breadth, as you would expect, we got more selling here today. Pretty substantial. Below the 9 and 21 EMAs on the 20-day breadth, momentum bearish, RSI bearish. And then looking at the 50-day back below the 9 EMA, still holding above the 21 and the 55, but both of these look quite bearish. They both look like double tops as well, which is not great. Maybe a slightly higher high here, but really it is below that wick on the 50-day average. Momentum on both of these rolling down. RSI looks weak. And if this does start to accelerate here over the next couple days, that could be quite bearish. Moving over to yields, we actually saw a little bit of a pop in yields here today, which is interesting, especially with the 2-year note auction coming in a little bit below the previous number, but saw a slight positive day, 0.85, 0.81. I've said for a couple of weeks now, I do think this is probably the zone where we're going to chop sideways. I think yields have kind of settled in to what the Fed is going to do, and it seems like we are kind of hovering here in some sideways consolidation. See how it plays out. This is a slightly higher low from this previous one. And if it does hold here, maybe we start to see some breakouts. But right now, my thesis is sideways chop as long as we stay below 4.35 and 4.81. Moving over to the dollar, this has been the problem child, and I was very concerned about it here on the Sunday video. Definitely check that out if you haven't. But we had two very powerful days. Hit resistance, sold off a little bit today, but you can see this here on the daily chart, got well above this trend line. This was a powerful trend line on the weekly chart, closed well above it. Bullish momentum, bullish RSI, right at 104.41, almost to the penny, sold off a little bit right at the 144 EMA, but still this looks very bullish with a low, higher low, slightly higher low here, pushing up to that resistance. And really, I would expect this to push to that next level, 105.5. And if it does, that should be bearish for equities. Dollar strength typically spells some weakness for equities. Moving over to bonds, you can see we did see a little bit more selling here today. So J&K continues this slight sell-off. Momentum bearish, RSI still hovering. Mixed signals here above the SMA, but trending downwards. Still above the 9 EMA on the charts, so still holding the level also at 94.82. See how it plays out. Right now it's in a slight uptrend within this longer term consolidation. And then similarly here, TLT still holding this double bottom. It is kind of trending back into that direction a little bit. 92.82 critical level. It is up a little bit after hours, but we're seeing a slight bounce in yields. And you can see this looks weak here on the RSI. You can see breakdown, retest, slight breakdown, which is usually not great. And I would expect this to break down a little bit further as yields looked pretty strong here today. And then moving over to volatility, looking at the MOVE index, you can see this continues to hover at a very low level relative to where we have been. And this is what I mean by the volatility has kind of come out of yields and bonds. Seems like markets have settled in a little bit, and volatility there is low. And then the VIX gapped higher, sold off, still hovering in the same zone around 13. Momentum did step up here slightly. We'll see if that has any follow through. Kind of interesting mixed signals considering that major indices kind of look like a bull flag, and we're seeing selling across multiple sectors. So we'll see how that pans out over tomorrow's session, but right now definitely mixed signals. Moving over to my accounts, I managed to make a little bit of money on the day, not a whole lot, but a little bit, up to just a few $100s there. And you can see my positions. IWM sold the 205s again. This is like the third time in a row selling the 205s. That is in the money here on the IWM, and you can see it's actually up a little bit after hours, but I'm not super concerned about that. I am a little bit more concerned about the charts. If it really starts to take off on me, I can roll up and out if I need to. I have no issues rolling into the end of the week if I have to, but I wanted to be a little bit more conservative here based on what I was seeing on the charts. And then looking at the Qs, similar thesis, sold the 444s for tomorrow. Again, that is in the money, and you can see it's up a little bit after hours like we talked about. If it breaks out of the bull flag, then I will roll up and out. But right now, I did want to collect those credits, $1.87 on each of them. And I did do it right at the end of the market. So that put me about 80 cents in the money. Still looking at a $200 profit potential in my main account and about $100 here on that poor man's covered call. So continuing to make money on both of those positions without any issues. And like I said, if these break out above the levels that we talked about, I have no issues rolling up and out at least one, maybe even two expirations. Let me know down in the comments section what you think of the charts. Are we going higher with that bull flag setup, or will the lawsuits and the other industry sectors pull down markets over the next couple days? Definitely like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video, and make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.